Well, after that conversation with the chairman of the New Hampshire Republican Party, it's time for some blatant, shameless puffery and punditry with the brilliant minds, or what we have here, which is Michael Dennehy and Matthew Bartlett, always known as the lovely and talented Matthew Bartlett, of course. Michael Dennehy worked on a gazillion campaigns. Bartlett, what? You got John Huntsman and Bono from U2. That's about it. So
I served on Kelly Ayotte's staff for several years too.
Oh, okay. Throw that in there. Okay, good deal. So let's don't waste any time. Let's get to the topic that is the first question people ask me when I'm out talking politics. What's the deal with Cindy Warmington? And I want to phrase the question this way. Have we now reached the point where every day she has decided not to get in makes it less and less relevant whether she ends up getting in or not? Age before beauty, Michael Dennehy.
Thank you. Yes, and I'll repeat myself, Michael. You are truly scraping the bottom of the barrel. And
that's where I live, man. That's my zip code. Barrel, comma, bottom. Michael Graham, deliver here.
What are the numbers of that zip code? I probably don't want to know. Hey, I actually don't think it much matters, Michael. At this point, when or if Cindy Warmington would get in, I don't believe she's going to get in. I've never thought she would, because I think she's smarter than most, and she's already lost. Now, granted, she's close to 70, so why not? But I think she's too smart. She knows Kelly Ayotte can't be beat. She knows she can't raise enough money to compete with Kelly Ayotte. The outside Dem organizations are not going to be putting money into this state unless something dramatic happens. And I think we all know that Trump's going to keep trying for for something dramatic to happen. Not necessarily good for the Republicans, right. But yeah, so I don't think it matters. I just don't think it matters. Yeah.
Bartlett.
Yeah, listen, what an honor to be on with Michael Dennehy, who in my early career got to follow in his footsteps, Senator John McCain all around the state. So, it's not a surprise that I largely agree with him. Listen, it's cold out there in New Hampshire. And also atmospherically, the conditions, no one's actually out there campaigning hard right now. So why not wait? Why not take a deep breath and figure if you want to jump into the pool again? If you're Cindy Warmington, the biggest issue out there is the money, and money matters to an extent. But I think everyone in purple New Hampshire will have plenty of money to be competitive.
So I'm sorry. It would be what you're saying would make sense, Bartlett, if you weren't saying it. No, I mean, here's the deal. You can't say 5 months ago, I'm thinking about running. You can't go to Landrigan and the union leader and say, I'm definitely getting in, and then have week after week after week and John Kuiper out stumbling around and having, at least a half dozen Democrats running for Congress and a couple running for U.S. Senate. And then you're still, I don't know, I don't want to answer your questions, go away. She dug this hole, and every day she doesn't say, yes, she doesn't have to run. She doesn't have to do, she doesn't do anything now, but it's just, yes, I'm running. I'm in. Here's my paperwork. See you in March or something. And I think every day, Dennehy, every day she stays out, she's sending a message to potential donors. I don't think I can win. And every day another checkbook closes. And so it's a vicious cycle that she's launched.
I think that's essentially the answer. That's her answer by not answering.
That's an interesting way.
And she could, to our earlier point, she could be hoping that something crazy in this world does happen that really opens it up for a Democrat.
Yeah, I gotta take issue with you and I'll ask Bartlett what he thinks. When you say that Ayotte can't lose, I'm not one of those people who looks at her poll numbers and goes, "Oh my gosh, this is terrible." I agree that her performance isn't nearly where Chris Sununu was his peak or John Lynch was his peak. But I just think we're in a different era. We're in an era where there are fewer swing districts for Congress. We're in an era where there's fewer swing voters. I just think a Republican who's plus 10 translates into the pre-Trump days of a Republican who was plus 20. See what I'm saying? And so, but at the same time, I don't think she can't be beat. Bartlett, I think someone absolutely, if Trump stays in the 30s in approval and someone has got a reason to run, I think she could be, she's not invulnerable. Do you think?
Yeah, listen, this is New Hampshire. Anything is possible, but that does not make it likely. And certainly Kelly, knows the state. She continues to be out there, to your point. You know what I mean? She's, hasn't ever stopped campaigning. She continues to be in the public. do they know you? Do they like you?
Right.
She's an incredibly affable governor, visible governor, and leading New Hampshire, sometimes even against the national grain. Nationally, it's caustic out there. I think here in New Hampshire, we still have that common sense Republican conservative, and she's doing a fine job at that. So anything is possible, but it doesn't make it likely.
And not to beat a dead horse, Michael, but I actually think I say this rarely about anyone. I think she's unbeatable for a couple of reasons.
Wow.
First, she's better than Chris Sununu was in his campaign. She's a better campaigner, she has better campaign strategy. Most importantly, she's much better at raising money. No one will compete with her on money, and you need money to win.
Right.
The Democrats will not have it. They won't compete with her on money.
Well, look, you're absolutely right about the money. And I also think that the way Ayotte ran in 2024, punch first and then keep punching.
Yes.
Just something that if you really want to run, you don't care because you're going to get your licks in too. And so what do you care? But if you're like, I don't know, the party wants me, I'm almost 70.
Yeah.
Geez, who the heck wants to do that? Which is why it's amazing to me that out of nowhere, once again, with a Kevin Landrigan mention, comes Julia Williams, the daughter of former Governor John Lynch. Bartlett, I got to ask you, how many nepo candidates can one small state generate? And are we just going to change the Constitution so that only 9 families are allowed to have? We'll just have them run the state,
Yeah, we all look forward to seeing which one of Ayotte's kids will be running for Senate. Listen, isn't it weird that the only one who didn't really make it or didn't get off the ground was Bernie Sanders' son, who I think Bernie didn't even endorse.
I say Levi couldn't get his dad's endorsements. That kind of hurt him, I think, a little bit.
Pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Now we are truly beating a dead horse. But I will say, Michael, I guess kind of to your point too, though, I do think it's strange for the Democrats to not try and build their bench, because I do think someone could have a respectable campaign against Kelly in a tough year for Republicans.
So this is an ongoing conversation for New Hampshire Journal, which is advocating productive losses. Ronald Reagan lost in 1976. By the way, 50 years ago, next month, he lost the New Hampshire primary to Gerald Ford by I think it was 5,000 votes or something. I guess it was close, but it set him up obviously for 1980. And you look at someone like whether it's Mayor McEachern in Portsmouth or State Senator Fenton, and you just go, you know what? I'm going to run a really smart meet me campaign. If Trump tanks and I'm governor, great. If not, no sweat off my brow. The day after the election, I'm going to announce I'm in it again already. And yet you rarely see that. In fact, look at the people who've lost their campaigns for governor, going back to, who was that income tax guy back in the
Mark Donald?
Yeah, I mean, I think they put him on the side of a milk carton after that election, and then you just go straight through. It's all disappear. Dan Felton said to leave the state. To
your point on that, it's easy on a federal. All you have to do is run against Trump, right? Anything Trump is for, I'm against.
Exactly, that's true.
On a state level, it seems as if, and I'm not trying to be too partisan here, the only thing the Democrats in New Hampshire want to do is raise taxes. Now, if that's your message, we're going to raise your taxes. Right. I just don't walk around the state and find people that go, gosh, my taxes are just too low. If only somebody would raise them. So again, that's what I think really illustrates the difference between, the national, the anti-Trump sentiment, which might be, solid here in New Hampshire to a large degree, but then at home here, solving problems. If your only answer is to raise taxes, that's still very problematic in New Hampshire.
So Michael Dennehy, what do Democrats say when you ask them, you're running for governor, you want to get rid of the incumbent, that means you're it's time for a change candidate. What do you want to change? I mean, the problem is you've got a state that's ranked number 1, 2, or 3 in almost everything. So you're going to run. We have great jobs, great schools, great lifestyle. Let's get rid of all that crap. Let's do something different.
This is another reason why I feel the way I do about Kelly Ayotte. And Michael, as you know, I run in circles with the disability community who tend to lean Democrat, and they love Kelly Ayotte. I shouldn't say they love.
But I know
yes, but they do like her as governor. And so I don't know what their message is. They had that energy press conference yesterday or 2 days ago, which seemed to me to be 100% worthless. She's failing on energy because she's just wants more fossil fuels.
I'm looking forward to Cindy Warmington running on her zero carbon emissions by 2040 platform again. The same one she had, just a year and a half ago, which of course is not going to happen because that's how fast things have changed. Now let's get to the federal side. So you guys know where I am, which is I'll believe Republicans can win a federal race when they win one. They haven't done it since 2010, basically, if you set aside the fluke of Ginta winning his old seat back. So, Michael Dennehy, what is the prospects with Trump at the top of the ticket of Republicans getting people to send someone to D.C. to help Trump?
Well, I'll tell you, it's disappointing, to be perfectly honest, that John Sununu decided to come back in this midterm of Donald Trump, because right now the environment's not very good.
Right.
It doesn't mean things can't change. Anything can happen, but it's an uphill battle right now for John Sununu with Trump at the top. Well, obviously not on the ticket, but driving the ticket down, so to speak. But I will say, as you and I have talked offline, Michael, I'm a huge John Sununu fan. I think he's a phenomenal servant, and I think he's a very good campaigner. I think he's even better than his brother was at campaigning and raising money, I might add. And I think if anyone can do it, he can. But it's just so hard if Trump's numbers remain this way.
Bartlett?
Yes. Again, largely concur with a bit of an asterisk there, right? We are New Hampshire. We're quirky. We're independent. We have that weird streak to us. And in some ways, that gives Senator Sununu the opportunity to be authentic, which is, I'm not going to go down there and serve a party. I'm going to serve New Hampshire and differentiate himself a little bit more than just being a pure partisan. In some ways, again, that can be helpful. There's some upside to that. But again, the overall downside, the atmosphere, Trump, midterms, all of that comes into play as well. If anybody can row against the tide, it would be John Sununu. He is New Hampshire through and through. Yeah. This is not an Alabama type style. This is a cerebral conservative, and I have to say, it seems as if, boy, he's not just united but even excited a lot of the Republican Party in ways that I have not seen in previous cycles.
So no mention of Scott Brown. Scott Brown, former U.S. Senator, came with the
Scott Brown's not going to win. He's not going to come close. Not even going to come close to Sununu in the primary. One more thing that did occur to me that I want to throw out there that could certainly help John Sununu. In 1992, which I know is before you guys were born, in 1992, I was working on Steve Merrill's campaign for governor, his first race, and Steve Merrill got 57% of the vote in a year where obviously George Herbert Walker Bush lost his reelection. He was extremely unpopular. And if it wasn't for Steve Merrill, Judd Gregg would not have won. He would not have beaten John Rao in the U.S. Senate race. I can't remember exactly what the margin was, but it was minuscule. And that could repeat itself with Kelly Ayotte at the top of the ticket this year. She could help drag votes right across for John Sununu next November. I think for that to happen, though, she kind of does need a competitive race. If she doesn't have anyone, then she's not going to be spending a ton of money. So on and so forth.
You've revealed to Ray Buckley what the obvious strategy is, which is grab Jess Spillers from her race against Jay Roy for mayor of Manchester, slap governor over mayor, send her out, have a no consequence, no candidate, give Governor Ayotte nothing to do, and just don't let that burner fire. And then you focus on the federal side, and the federal side's just stronger. So
it's true.
Well, listen, I just bragged on Senator Sununu, who I think the world of. Let me also just brag on Chris Pappas and be honest here. This is a guy that, comes from a storied family, an amazing business. I remember seeing him taking out the trash at the dumpster at the Puritan back when he was an executive counselor.
Sure.
He's won in a Republican district, and he's shown some, skill. I remember in 2024, he was running, as a independent. I will even work with Trump on certain issues. I think maybe even immigration he mentioned. And then I was at his kickoff for Senate months later, where he's, bashing Trump and Elon Musk. So, he's talented as well. It should be a blockbuster Senate race.
No, I agree with you. I think Pappas is very solid. He's the best. He will perform better than Shaheen would have if she'd run for re-election, because she would have to carry
totally
the.
agree.
Well, no, I mean, first of all, she has the age thing. But
Right,
Biden changed the age. Age went from a number 10 issue to like a number 3 issue. So that's a problem. But also, she's just she's got a big messy record that you could fire away at. Pappas is great. Pappas knows that the ideal candidate in New Hampshire at the federal level is a boring Democrat who says nothing. And man, he owns that.
He sure does.
If your flavor of ice cream were a political issue, the guy could walk through Baskin Robbins and not get a single drop of any flavor on him. It'd be just absolutely. It'd be the guy's great. I want to ask something more broadly. The New Hampshire Republican Party now has a new chairman. We just had the interview with him here on the podcast, and Scott Maltzy has been around a long time. I didn't realize he had actually worked in the state under John Sununu back in the. So he has an amazing record. But the real question is, one, why is it that New Hampshire doesn't have a Republican Party that can compete at an infrastructure level, at a week to week level with the Democratic Party? I mean, people have been watching what Ray Buckley's been doing for decades now. The smart thing to do if you're Coke and Pepsi's kicking your butt is, go make some Pepsi. So what's up? Why not, Dennehy?
Well, I can tell you a lot of this does date back to the 90s. The Democrats got super well organized when they started winning all their races, especially when they won the governor's race in 1996. And when Republicans started losing, as we have seen across the country, that's when there becomes more infighting. That's when you lose control from an infrastructure level with the Republican Party. And in the good old days of the 90s, the governor was always Republican, federal delegation was mostly Republican, and they would all agree on how the Republican Party would operate, be funded, and who would hold what office. I mean, we went in there in 1992, 1993 with a slate of officers that just was rubber stamped.
Right.
And now, so that's where it all started to fall apart. And then since really there's been some ups and downs. When Governor John Sununu took over, it was super well respected and awesome operation. But typically speaking, Chris Sununu and Kelly Ayotte have not been heavily involved in state party operations. So it's left to everyone else to just figure out.
So Matthew, does it matter in the era when parties don't matter? That's what I've been told. Parties don't matter. So does it matter?
I mean, yes and no, right? Like when you have elections that are close, everything is on the margins. Right. But to your larger question, I even think this goes down to the identity of our society, maybe even the origins of our country. You know what I mean? Democrats, collectivism, community, organizing, Republicans, the individual. You know what I mean? Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to act. Don't tell me, very different ethos, the yin and the yang. Right. I even think, much of our, parties, you can look at the Republican Party, Declaration of Independence. You know what I mean? Fuck you. Don't tell us what to, that spirit maintains. Democrats, Bill of Rights, organization, not saying they're perfect analogies, but there's a yin and a yang that I think you still see in terms of New Hampshire, our founding, and certainly how we organize our parties or don't organize our parties.
And as you can tell, Dennehy, Bartlett has embraced the warm comfort of socialism and rejected the cold harshness of individual responsibility. So that's however Mondami put it. I always knew Bartlett was this far away from being a Mondami Democrat. It's happening here live. So here's my question for you. Is 2026 going to be more like 2018? A bad year for the Republicans in power, but not a total disaster, Sununu, whatever? Or is it going to be 2006, a total bloodbath with Republicans forced to live in shivering cold and feast off the bodies of the fallen. Which one are we looking at, Matthew Bartlett?
Nationally or New Hampshire?
New Hampshire.
It's hard to say. 2006, you had a lot of Republicans in federal office. We were still very much large. You had Charlie Bass, you had Jeb Bradley, you had John Sununu, you had Judd Gregg. So the entire delegation was federal. Now they're all Dems. So it's hard to say that this, beating would be a la
good point.
And then you look again, I do think that not only has that changed, but again, it seems if we might be in this homeostasis balance of we remain Democrat in DC, but we remain Republican at home. Again, and go fight Trump, but don't screw up New Hampshire. Don't raise our taxes in New Hampshire too much. We weather the storm pretty well here in New Hampshire. We'll see what happens.
You've been to plenty of these races, Dennehy. How does it feel to you?
It feels a lot like 2018.
Okay.
It does. And I think, that being said, I think Kelly Ayotte's going to be a lot stronger than Chris Sununu was in that first re-election for his race, where he only beat Molly Kelly by 4 points.
I think it was 7, if I remember correctly.
Was it 7?
I think it was 7. But
I don't know why I have 4 in my head.
I think Paul Collins had the epic line after that. Molly Kelly said, "Don't underestimate me." After the election, Paul Collins said, "We didn't underestimate you, but we may have overestimated you."
But that was a fun, but like you said, it was a very normal. It was a race worth watching. It wasn't a blowout. It wasn't whatever. So there's that. I just, on the one hand, I just see total disaster, like flames of pits from the mountain of Mordor and all that stuff. On the other hand, I keep looking at these growth numbers in the economy, and someone showed me something on Twitter the other day. The dissatisfaction with the economy numbers, and I forget which poll it was, but the point was it was the same poll for the past 18 months. And dissatisfaction went from 30 to 20 to 18 to 12. And the fact that's one reason why on our last poll, we didn't ask the question, are we right track, wrong track? Because that's immediately partisan. Is America doing good or bad? Immediately partisan. We asked, how was your Christmas? Because we took the poll the week after Christmas. 70% good or great. How do you expect next Christmas to be? 70% good or great. And I think there's a disconnect between how most people in the Granite State are living their lives. Obviously, some people are struggling. If what is that old line about a recession is when your neighbor loses his job, a depression when you lose yours. So I'm not discounting real people with real problems, but if the median of the bell curve is pretty darn good and it keeps getting better, you wonder if you couldn't have a point where suddenly people felt good at just the right time. Could Donald Trump be the luckiest SOB in politics? That's the question.
Well, the other thing to that point, Michael, I think probably all three of us have underestimated Donald Trump at one time or another. And so I do think it's important to always remember he isn't to be underestimated. You and I have talked about him, his focus way too heavily on foreign affairs, international affairs right now. Has to get back to what's happening right here at home. I do think there's still some time to pull things together here in the country, and employment numbers are decent. The stock market's strong. So businesses, small businesses in particular, have to start feeling better about where the country's headed, where the state's headed, where the economy's headed.
Matthew Bartlett, the last word. They have to be better than your previous ones. So take it away.
It gets late early nowadays.
Yeah,
so everyone keeps talking about how we got a lot of time. I don't see it. And again, to Mike's point, the president seems to be obsessed with the history books. Americans seem to continue to be focused on their pocketbooks. It's going to be a true challenge. If you're out there trying to justify, Donald Trump does not do, I feel your pain. He does, I feel your rage. And right now, as you said, the same powerful notion that brought a lot of Republicans to DC may send them out. I think the good news is in New Hampshire, again, a lot of these atmospheric pressures do not lay at the feet of Governor Ayotte. So again, we will see what happens in New Hampshire, but it's going to be a rough road for Republicans nationally, I think.
Well, my fear of a 2006 has to do with turnout. What if Republicans just have no reason to turn out? Like, they don't like Trump, they don't like what's going on, they feel crap about everything. But I will say that one advantage that Kelly Ayotte and the state legislature have is we're such a high turnout state that there's a big mountain of marbles to move on election day, even if everybody on the ballot stinks. People, it's just a state that votes.
Mike, Mike, you would know, Michael would. Did we have straight ticket ballot in 06?
No.
We did not? When did we get rid of that?
Still, it was in the 90s.
It was in the 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, New Hampshire loves to zig and zag, even on a ballot.
Yeah, for sure.
We got to zig and zag out of here, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Michael Dennehy and Boulay. Did I say that right? Or
yes, sir.
Boulay and I can never remember who goes first. Matthew Bartlett at a local jail who'll be holding a sign. Then he stands to the left and the right. Also at Darby Field Advisors. Thanks so much for being part of the New Hampshire Journal podcast, guys.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Matt.
Yay.